Did we hit 15?
We're live.
We are. Okay. Well, let's do our thing. I'm going to share. You share out. I'll share out. Tag a bunch of people. And then we're going to get into this wounded masculine. But it's not about gender. We'll see how we go with this one. I think it's going to be quite the topic. I do believe.
Definitely going to be quite the topic, and I just hope that it sits and doesn't cut out again.
And if the music is too loud, you let me know.
Music's perfect.
Awesome. Bliss Looper. It's just a whole other different vibe. Okay, and it's just beautiful music. And on a night like this, in beautiful sunny Edmonton, we are now at what time is it? Just a little bit after 9 o'clock, and the sun is still up. In fact, we're coming up to the longest day of the year, and we get sunlight up until just after 11 o'clock at night. Isn't that something? And then we lose 7 minutes every day there afterwards. Sort of a brings you into the moment, I guess. Okay, and I'm just doing a little bit of tagging here, and if this works, okay. And the wounded masculine, I mean, like a lot of people say it's a toxic masculine. How many times have you heard that? 1,000,000 times? You know, the world's run by toxic masculinity. Is it really toxic?
I think that it's that representation is probably relevant to a certain part, but a huge component, the toxicity masculine versus the wounded masculine, there's no relevance. There's no relevance whatsoever because, as you said, gender. It's based on a gender statement, and that's not what we are. There's the equality of both within us. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to find. That's what we're trying to locate. And if you want to share, I can talk a little bit about this while this is still
you talk. I'm going to share out. I'm going to send this out to all the groups I can. So if I get blocked, what happens? But I'll let you talk a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's like we're talking about wounded masculine, and if we were to use the word wounded twin, we could then engage in the space of self even further, because the wounded twin we might as well call the element of darkness that resides within us. And as the element of darkness sits inside, and it is part of us, we do cater to that disempowerment, meaning that what that darkness creates upon us in a lesser worthy state. And that lesser worthy state is something that we need to consider now as the paramount important balance. Because if we're feeling disempowered within ourselves and we're stepping into a higher vibration, and that higher vibration is a consciousness of love and the characteristics of creation, then we're sitting in a space where we're just like on the fence post, fully on the fence post, not engaging to the fullest proportions of being able to quantify that equality establishment as we sit in silence. Because it only happens when the forgiveness of what we have done or what we have done to ourself that our other self has seen and not represented in a point of balance or same, meaning when we engage, there was always that division. There's been that division. We need to come back to a space now where there is no division, and the equality of self is only the journey in which you have finally decided that you are on. Because whilst other entertaining facts come into play with storylines, and I know this and you don't know that, and this is this and this is that, you're not balancing anything. You are not healing anything. You are just going through that next process of contempt upon self. There can be no balance there because ego is still carrying the mind. Ego is still carrying the voice. When the wounded state in which we are, in the pleading of look at what is happening, only need to sit upon ourselves as we reside within the space of, oh, okay, I know now that that is happening. Categorically know that that is happening. And the balance of who I am is going to allow me to nurture through this next part, because time is nothing. And if we've got to pick something out of the air like you have today in regards to wounded masculine, that is every man, that is every woman that is living, that is breathing, that is sitting within a space of knowing that where they have found themselves is somewhere where they have never, ever been before.
Wow. That's a great way to start this in many ways. In fact,
Yeah.
go on, Adrian.
No. This is no. That's my interpretation of what a beautiful movement of people that have seen something and seen the magnificence of who they are, to step outside of where they were, to still be thinking they can play the game of what is going on and still be that beautiful, magnificent person as a result of containing or remaining within that substance of game, not including himself as a piece. Therefore, there is still the duality, because as a piece recognition of what you are, peace, as in P-I-E-C-E.
Yeah. Are
Yeah,
you whole or are you broken in pieces?
exactly.
You know, this topic has been coming up on and off. Okay, and a lot of people that I work with here in, you know, in the light energy groups and in the healers, okay, is that this topic of, you know, toxic masculine keeps, you know, coming to the forefront, and it's a label that is being put on us, on men, for a majority of it, and a majority of us men are not toxic, we're wounded, okay, but it's not just the gender. The masculinity, as you stated, Adrian, is in both male and female. This duality that we carry within us is what makes us whole. You know, those of you that are searching to become full or wholesome or in oneness, it takes both, it takes the understanding of these both energies. And in order to walk with a partner of the opposite sex, regardless if you're male or female, it takes to find balance for both of you. In order to understand is that my emotional side of me, my sensitivity, my vulnerability, is that of my feminine energy. It allows me to speak with emotion, feel with emotion, but not in the sense of manipulation, because there's a key here. Many of us use the power of emotion to manipulate the other through drama, through pointing, through blaming, and on and on and on. We can go into the multitude, vast universe of these, of the toxic part of the woundedness, because it's been imposed upon us. And then it's not something just over the last couple of years. It's been ongoing for a very, very, very long time. In fact, it's been ongoing for thousands of years. And the essence is that, you know, men for the most part have been driven in one direction and women have been driven in another direction. But in this golden age where we are right now, in this moment, not this V thing and not this M thing, okay, that's BS, okay? What it is about where are we as humans? Where are you with this? You know, you want to go to the ascension, you want to rise to the fifth dimension. But in order to rise to this fifth dimension, you need to have balance of these dual energies. You know, this frequency, this high vibration of love of self begins with the acceptance of the masculinity and the femininity within the creature that we are. And I use the term creature because we're all creatures of life. All of us. Doesn't matter what species we are, whether you're human or an animal or a mammal, we all have these dual energies. The only one that's out of balance with the duality is us humans. Just look around you. Look at your stories. Go back into your narrations. You know, your experiences in life, your trials at trying to love and be loved. Where were the imbalances? Where, you know, the emotional engagement was maybe not there. And in today's world, our emotional engagement is not emotionally engaged, it's emotionally disengaged. So we're using the power of emotion to point and blame and do it this way and do it that way and still hold on to the old story. And I might have lost Adrian, but I'll just keep on talking. And share this out to your groups and your friends. Because regardless of what walk of life you come from, as a male or female, you have both these energies. This power of the femininity within me allows me to be extremely sensitive, but not in a bad way. It allows me to be sensitive to life. Animals, mammals, aves, and yes, even humans. But a majority of the time, the humans are so disconnected, I prefer to spend time with the latter, okay? Because they're not in disbalance with this energy. They flow with it. It's integrated with them. All around us, this life is integrated with the balance of the feminine and the masculine energy. Look at the birds. They're flying freely. They're chirping and they're singing between each other. They're pairing off, and many of these species of the aves pair off for life. They're in balance. As humans, we take the oath and we say, till death do us part, for better or for worse. And when the worst steps in, we run. How many of us have seen this? How many of us have experienced this? Rather than, work at it harder. We don't. We have a tendency to run in today's world and think it's greener on the other side of the fence. And many times that happens within your own fencing because something's emotionally disconnected. So you seek attention from the emotional needs. That's our caring nature, this emotional, how can I explain it? Essence of vulnerability. This ability to understand just how sensitive I can be and to be able to shed a tear when I need to, without judgment, without belittlement, without being degraded down to a subhuman because I show emotion. Male or female, it's to find balance with these emotions, to find balance with this energy within us that we seek. Oneness. How many of you take meditation and courses and, all of the fangling things out there to try and find balance within you when it's already there? You just look in the mirror and look deep. Look deep into the mirror, because within the mirror, you see the reflection of self. Where are you with your duality, your strength? Bring up your masculine. Use it as the protector. Use it as the strength that is required in many, many different facets of being human. But we have a tendency to sometimes take the strength of that masculine and it's used wrongly. Because now it's the mind fuckery that sets in. And from within the mind fuckery, what is happening? We're over aggressive. And this happens not just in the males, it happens in the females as well. Because the aggressivity doesn't have to take on the physical form, it takes on this verbal form. And this verbal pollution that comes out rather than what the heart is trying to say. The heart is trying to speak its truth, and the mind is caught up in the hurt. And then it turns it into something that it's not. And you can't take back what you've said. Doesn't matter. Even if you say sorry, you can't take back what has already been said. It's been seeded. And it sets a trigger. And this trigger becomes part of you until you let go of it. And you come into this where you are in the here and now, and especially in this environmental hogwash that's going on around us. And I'm not talking about the earth, I'm talking about peoples. We're stuck in the discrimination, the bigotry, the pointing and blaming of another country, and the pointing and blaming of another politician, and the pointing and blaming of a fellow human being. Disconnected from this emotional intelligence that helps us to understand what this balance is of the masculine and the feminine. If I look at it in the sense of emotion, my masculine emotion is firmness, is strength. It holds to my word, also holds to what my heart is feeling, and it keeps it strong. In my feminine side of it, it allows me to keep it strong, but yet be kind with it, attentive, listening, welcoming, rather than pushing all of this away. When we push this away, we get lost. And everything around you is showing you the answer, aside from humans. Psychologist is not going to help you with this. A psychiatrist is not going to help you with this because they read from a book contextual essences. But somebody who is speaking with heart and is with heart and has been on that journey and has a story, like we all have stories. But in the power of sharing this story, we're allowed to see that we can uplift each other, console each other. Here, you're born with two fundamental principles: the need to be understood and the desire to understand. Two principles that are right there at the very essence of birth, the very essence of your youth. Isn't that what you're doing as a child? You know, it's like, Mommy, please listen to me. Daddy, please listen to me. You're trying to find with balance within the two. But your mother is disconnected and your father is disconnected. So now you're disconnected in the essence of this desire. And Adrian's in backstage and letting me take center stage. So Adrian, come back up front. Get your partake in where we're going with this and how we can use it in creating it in a better world. Because it takes both of these energies for us to walk hand in hand. Not in relationships. Well, maybe yes, in a relationship. But is it a relationship with another, or is it the relationship with self? Where's the relationship with self? Where is your...
There I am.
So, as my relationship to self question comes in, well, my brother steps in. And
Fucking hell. Fuck. Technology. Sorry for the
technology.
profanity. I was listening. I've been backstage for about 12 minutes. 11. Let's say 8.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you had like a lot of all of that chaos that you described is in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that we all have the necessary components without even leaving our seat to complete this task. Okay. And this task is everything that you described, everything that everyone is actually talking about. To completely forget it and realize that each and every one of those components that you forgot or have let go of have all been a story. And if we're to talk about the duality of masculine and feminine is in the two gender identities, it has always been described that there has never been an assimilation of the very identity of two. Because in Adam and Eve, there was always a division. Yeah, they were happy. One made a choice, fucked it up for the other. Then all of this bullshit was created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In Egypt times, there were always queens. There's always been queens and kings. Okay? But that is only a role. That is only a story. That has nothing to do with divinity in regards to what it might have meant in Egyptian times.
Mm-hmm.
In any story of any situation, the imbalance of the vernacular that is used has always created the space of division. There has never been the truth of existing in one. And the only one that would really go to that would be Indigenous, but then they also had gender equality, but then also the Asians, that whole Asian Buddhist dynamic. Okay.
Yeah.
And in later populations, it's all been destroyed because women have a lesser value than what men did during a certain time of, I suppose, industrial revolution. Yeah. And where the big money items were placed, the buck items, how you were going to get money on the table. And that was always due to the man using hands to create that power of soldier, ant, sheep, minion, whatever you want to say. Okay? In all of that appreciation of what a feminine is to what you would picture a feminine to be, in your own interpretation, is that of something that's nurturing. A mother instincting the space that she knows intuitively is a protecting of her child, of her offspring.
Yeah.
A father was always given the role to go out and get the food on the table. Always has been. In all of history. Whether they were getting paid for it or they were slaves of it. They were always out there on the fields day to day. Women were also in that orientation, be it in the slave proportions, be it in that limited access of being able to obtain funding, money. So when all of that goes to pass and the necessary components are of value to what you require to move forward only of yourself, nothing else. Because if you have a family attached to you, they are no good as you being a dual identity. The system puts the duality enforces the duality within us to create the indecisiveness of what we actually are when we are humble. And when we are humble, we are grateful for everything around us, everything that is available to us, not to exhaust, not to exploit, but to actually use as a part of our experience in this measure.
Very well
Nothing
said.
else means anything, because there is always going to be noise that is going to be non-consistent to the vibration in which you carry. And I entertain that when you are even out there experiencing Gaia to the fullest proportions, you have flies all over you. So you have that buzzing, that restriction, or that, I suppose, that movement into your vibration that's causing a interaction of, oh, I'm pissed now. Yeah.
Well, what happens? Here's an example. If you walk into a forest with anger, you're going to find out flies are more attracted to you. You're going to find out that those that bite and are looking for blood are going to be more attracted to you because your anger is raising the heat signature. And the heat signature is saying, there's food in the forest. They're going to feed upon your anger. You walk into that forest with softness, balance, tenderness, or just, breathing. You're probably going to still have some flies around you. But
definitely. But in Australia, for instance, I spent one time, I was up southwest Queensland, 45 degrees, in the shade it would have been. Yeah. We're out doing what we were doing, and I was with some Indigenous guys, and I swear to God, if I did not have 1,000 flies on my back, Yeah, there was no anger. It was just it was pure pleasure and joy. But as you're getting around, that bzzz right near your ear, getting caught in your hair, like, oh wow, get out of there, yeah. It causes that disruption.
Yep.
So if you're to give that space to the existence of the storyline within life, and they are just the storylines that are playing out are just flies, they are pests, they are disease, they are a swarm, yeah? A swarm that has always been there and will always be there, the more that you give it credit for being there. Yeah?
Yeah.
And it will always continue to play. It will always continue to have a role within the story while people are still listening to it. Flies are going to be there as well, but you still get on with it, don't you? You don't go and hunt a fly out when you're in a it might be different if you're in a house, but when you're in a wilderness and there's flies on you, you don't go and hunt that out, do you? You don't go, oh shit, this thing's like followed me for 40 minutes now. You don't do that. Why do we do that with the story in which we find ourselves that is written in front of us? This is what has completely denied and annihilated any substance of assimilation that we had as an identity of self. This whole storyline in which each and every one of us have played, because we've never considered more than just a second that we are something. We've never held that second for longer than a moment to give it any validation that it might be actually true.
Well, isn't that because we're afraid to go into that truth? A majority? Now, I'm speaking in general out there. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
From my own point of view, I'm not afraid. And that's me.
I think the fear is not the story. The fear is not the story. The fear is that people are going to have to repent for their actions. When you go to that space of silence and you get everything given to you in one moment, when you let go and you can actually see that you are just a grain of sand on a beach where the tide comes in constantly. Yeah. So that movement, that change is all new and building on top of to a fluidity that is natural, but it's unnatural in the characteristics of what is the overarching principle of the story. And that is the annihilation of spirit within ourselves. To consciously not hurt somebody frivolously, to not go just rampantly and exploit the ability to tell a story. That's what we're doing. That's why we're here. Because we've listened to people that are peanuts, that are really peanuts, that got a good story, that allowed it to take a moment to shine, and then it was exploited to proportions that were just unforeseen and riches that people could not even comprehend would be rationalized into one person's identity. And when that plays out, and there's so many people that are failing, but there are so many people that are having that story, that same story, that inclusion, that possibility, that opportunity, and yet it's not being looked at in the same principle as those that have found it, then there's fear and there's anger. I don't want anything else. I don't want change. Oh my God, I've put myself out there. I'm happy working 38 hours, 60 hours to do this. Because I got to have this, I got to have that, I got to have this, I get to have this, I get to have that, I get to have this. And all of that is in a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week concrete jungle, and never, ever feeling what the dew is in the morning, or how the grass smells when it's cut, or seeing how heat rises from the ground during points of day, seeing all of that movement of life. That people don't go down that path because it's got no value to money.
You hit it right on the money. You couldn't have said it any more perfect. because it's all about exactly that. If money can't, look, money can't buy the birds that are flying in the sky, so we don't want to pay attention to it. But if we could buy them, okay, and own them, we probably would pay more attention to it. The mass would, because it's given that falsified sense of, ooh, that felt good because I got to buy something. And then, you know what? It's, you put it off into the cupboards or you put it off into the side space and it collects dust. In this essence of,
Well,
you said, how many people don't take the time to feel the dew in the morning, get up before the sun has risen and step outside and say, you know what? Wow, another day begins. Another story begins.
and
Is it hard?
I think a lot of people would shift from that if they knew it was that easy, that they didn't have to tie themselves into the story of change to actually be the change.
Exactly.
Yeah. To not
Why?
look at being anywhere, to not look at ascending, to not look at finding a twin flame, to not look at finding a soul partner. Because the soul is the planet of the earth. The soul is the intuitive knowledge of what we carry when we connect, so that there is nothing else in a story that actually propels entertainment. Okay? Because all we're looking for in these tired hours of what we've worked, in lives that we've worked, you've lived, you're 60 and your birthday's just been here. Happy birthday for the week that has had. So there's a lot of 60-year-olds that are saying, oh, wow, now I've got to wear a mask. What the hell's all of this stuff? Their whole life is shifted to an adolescent, to a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding and comprehension, that they have a voice to go, oh, that's not right.
Yeah. You know,
That's not right.
you mentioned something as an example. I passed by a coffee shop today, and there was a fair number of elderly gents that I would say is either at my age or maybe a little bit older, and all the talk and all it was about the histories of the atrocities, the negativity, the governments, all the same story, same rehashing of the same story. Rather than, like you said, I can listen to all of this garbage and let the flies attack me, or I can be part of the change and at least, well, maybe they won't attack me as bad because I'm moving in this fluidity of life. I'm integrating myself with the fluidity of life. I'm integrating myself with Gaia. You know, and a lot of people I speak to say, Gary, you're a little too earthy. Really? Well, my feet are on the earth. I look at the sky. Am I not an earthly being? Are you not an earthly being? Do we have respect for the earth? Do we see what she's showing to us? How she's showing us to live in the moment, be in the moment, have balance with the masculinity and the femininity, because look at what nature shows us. It shows us balance of these two energies. It truly does. You know, I had a conversation with somebody about flowers. And as an example, jasmine sambac is known by its intonation as the king, masculine, of the night flowers. Rose is known as the queen of all flowers. Again, the king and the queen syndrome, you know, and sort of these stories that come forward. But when we look at this jasmine as an example, it is also a balance of a masculine and a feminine. It has the strength of its masculinity in order to survive the environment, and it has its power, the femininity, in its essence of its aroma. And this duality comes together to say, here I am as one. Not as a one or the other, but here I am as one. We as humans, we say I'm a man, so I don't cry, because that's what we've been told. I'm a woman, and so I cook. The old ways. Now it's a fight between that the woman and the man can be equal. Well, of course they're equal. We've always been equal, but we allowed something to set in. Industrialization, maybe. But even before that, you mentioned the Egyptians. It was there in the Egyptians. Okay, it
We
was
let their
there in that.
story, we let their story take its role. The
Yes.
power play in which it was always destined to be. And it brings me to a space of recognizing, right? And each person has to do this, that there is a club that we never knew about. We never knew about, but we did, okay? Because it's always there. It's flamboyantly in every town. There is a structure that basically acknowledges that it existed within that town during its heritage, during its lifetime. And that's probably around 3 parts of the Western world. And if we weren't in that club, it's the club that won't let Adrian in. It's the club that didn't let Gary in. It's the club that didn't let Donna in. It's the club that didn't let Carol or Jackie or Steve or Assad. Do you really want to get angry about that? I don't care. It's a stink-ass club. I've been not invited to many parties.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we limiting ourselves from trying to pinpoint who, why, when, how, and why did it happen? I said why twice, but why did it happen? Why are we trying to pinpoint that in regards to the history, to the now, because it's only repeating itself with the technology that is now available. Okay?
It's amplified with the technology.
Sorry?
It's amplified with technology.
Yeah, the technology, but I'm also talking about the science elements that are manufactured.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm.
Why are we looking to tell that story? As we recognize that there is so much more, we yet put another limitation upon ourselves by thinking that this is the only story that they're wanting us to stop and say. That this is the story that is being barred. This whole stop this, no, none of that, getting tied in with all of this. No, we're not a 24-hour news service. This is not giving you the real news in association to what is written in that storyline. None of this is written. This is an understanding and comprehension of when you leave yourself alone and you pride the time that you take to repair the worst of what was you. We've all got a worse side.
Mm-hmm.
And if we haven't repaired that, it can't be an assimilation. This is the opportunity to stop and stop and stop. Not continue, to stop, that their time has no relevance. The detachment of their time from our existence allows so much of a rewriting, in a stepping back into the footprint that is you. I said to you before we even started, you don't look 60 years of age. There are many men that are 60 years of age that carry 60 years plus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 47. I know I don't look 47. Because of the simple fact that what that whole story, that whole label, that whole existence of what they put upon me is not me. Never was me.
Mm.
To the proportions of being belittled, to the proportions of being annihilated in the confusion of trying to find self through all of that experience. That is chaos that every person has lived through, whether or not they're successful or whether or not they're peddling nothing in a cardboard box on the side of the street. To that, we are all the same. The effect and the resilience in which some of us have been able to have, or the people that have been able to step in and actually lend a hand in support to see that there was something that wasn't told in your story.
Mm-hmm.
Power is nothing. Power is nothing. If you do not have the truth behind the power in what you believe that you are saying, you are only speaking on a soapbox.
You're speaking out of ego.
Exactly. You are not speaking to the truth of why you're opening your mouth in the first place. And the wounded element in which we're talking about today is simply repairing all of the no's and all of the yeses that have ever been said to you in your life. to see whether or not each and every one of those no's were a relevant no for you to grow, or a same applied to the yes, to whether or not it limited you. Because people have always been here in this same space of vibration and exploited this to make money upon it.
Mm.
And that is why the world is so varied in what is being able to be approached as spiritual, science, analytical, philosophy. All of those are just a culmination of excuses to actually stop the assimilation of self, to create a worthiness. Half this rot that we put ourselves through, half this stuff that we see people exploit themselves to, we do not have any want, need, care for it anymore. There is no discussion about the poverty in the world. There is no discussion about the people being executed in Africa at this point in time during that whole guerrilla thing, or that whole war that's going on there. None of that's being spoken about. None of the terror that is the failing of humanity is being spoken about.
Nope.
And that's still going on. That's still going on because those people are still there. They haven't died. They're still going through that. Many of them are being killed, executed. There's a whole shift that's going on, and we're not even focused on that. We're focused about some peddling of a story in the concerns of what we can do for our brothers and sisters. Well, our brothers and sisters are further than our next door neighbors in the shores in which we live. Yes. They are all over the planet. They are all in the same element. Much more, I say, those in the third world countries are in a much higher vibration than what the Western world countries are, because they consider nothing than what they have. They consider nothing than what they have. Majority of those third world countries exist only on what they are able to get, because it's being restricted on what they're able to access.
Yeah, in many ways, Adrian. I've had, the ability to travel around to many parts of the world. And I remember a story going back about 20 years ago in one part of the world where I was in, and I won't mention where it was, okay? But what I was able to see was a family living in a shack, 5 children, the mother and the father, all living together, no windows. And the 5 children were outside playing with a tin can. They were laughing, enjoying themselves. They weren't in any type of disconnection, fighting over toys. And then coming back to Canada to see that people are running to the Toys R Us to get more toys because their children don't have enough toys. We've disconnected from a lot of things, what purpose is in life. In North America and the majority of the westernized worlds, it's all about the power of buy, and buy. And at the end of the day, what do you have? You have a bunch of stuff that collects dust. To be honest with you, it collects dust. But what we have within us, and what I pull back from this story of this family, is that they had something I didn't have. They had love. And I don't mean that I didn't have love, but they had love at a far greater level, because the simplicity of the way they were living, they weren't seeing the hardship. They were doing what was needed to do or be done to support their children and support each other. I saw the mother and the father unified. And I mean unified in the sense that they looked at each other, they sat with each other, they talked to their children. And their children were talking to them. And they weren't talking to their children like a bunch of little children. They were having very good conversations with their children. In fact, intelligent conversations. It wasn't about, well, I want a toy, or I want this, or I need this. No, they were talking about life. And at the same time playing with a tin can. We come here and it doesn't work. Why? Because we've been programmed.
I had that same experience. And the culture. That's what it is. It comes down to culture. And Western, I'm sorry, I'm white. Western don't have culture. Our culture is to disrupt the culture in which we arrive, and where we arrive.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
that's why we're so lost. That's why we're so lost, because we've got a lot of peanuts going around and going, I know this, and oh my God, I've written that, and oh yes, no, this is that now, and we have to go through this principle because this is this and that is that, and this is this and that. And shove it up your ass, man. Seriously, the science, the methodology of madness is just allowing people to go into a room, and this is what our whole existence is. It's like a whole room of people just going, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Page 67, page 98, page 146. Everybody is looking for that 15 minutes of fame to get at least a voice to be heard. Because we don't change in proportions of small anymore. We change in proportions of huge, because we see that we are the ultimate identity of race. And that ignorance of ego completely compels stupidity to arrive in such an abundant form. Because as people stand in the sun and go, oh my God, I just come up with this really cool idea that's going to make me $1 million, and all I've got to do is show my tits on screen for 30 seconds on TikTok.
Yeah. Oh, that opens up a can of worms, my friend. You know, it's
because information has allowed that to be part of existence. They have seen people successfully do it, and people somewhat successfully think that it's been done because it's been portrayed on television in some proportion. So they go, oh yeah, we can do that. Then they actually expel it to a point of, okay, I'm going to do this. This is me. Then you'll get a whole mess of same generation do the same thing. Then the limitations on what that creates is they don't even think that that's 38. That's half a career that they could possibly do that. And that's they're extending it. And they're thinking, I can get in, get out, do this. I watch all of them silly people do these things. And they bring the narrative to such a low level, to such a very low level, that they consider that they are the only ones that are speaking of any relevance. Now, men that are married, that are going through that whole space of remaining within a partner of self. This is failing. Where did Gary go? The men that are going through this whole part now of masculine, of ego, of denying a story taking place, denying change, you're only affecting yourselves, because the change is happening whether or not you like it or not. While you're asleep, it's changing in proportions that you can't even consider. So while you're awake, don't entertain the living states that you consider to be awoke. Don't entertain that story as part of your existence. It is sad that many women do not value themselves more than that. And that's exactly a lot. And that is so sad. That is so sad, because you've got women coming up that can rule this world, can run this world, not rule, run this world in such a gentle hand, as they know that that's all that's required. Because what we've gone through is so much more devastating than what we would even, in this last 2 years, the mental health that has been disturbed to the relevance of a person in where they found themselves in a story confidently, to now being in a point of upheaval. I'm talking about cafe people. I'm talking about people, that entrepreneurs that have invested on an idea that were somewhat humble to who they are in the value of what they could deliver. And I know that there are some really cool barista cafes around the planet that do it under that principle. That coffee is something that is engaging. Coffee is something that is a community. It's a connection. And the cake's attributed and all of that. That's culture. Like, what's Western coffee? What is Western coffee?
It's not
Freeze-dried.
coffee. Yeah, here's some instant coffee.
Western, yeah, like every culture has coffee relevant to where it is. You go into the Asian communities, it's not a hot coffee, it's an iced coffee. Yeah, it's a crushed ice in a cup. It's coffee that's been like a like a percolator, but ground coffee that just drips into a spoonful of condensed milk and ice. So then there's their coffee. Yeah, that's their relevant coffee. You go over to Japan, there's a whole different coffee. You go all the way over to Egypt, and there's a whole different coffee. Jordan's coffee to Egypt is completely different, and it's only 300 k's away. Across border to border. So coffee in that whole world, other than Western world, is a culture within itself. And it's not to talk about coffee. It's to talk about culture that even we have that are only 2 generations away that we can call back on, seeing our grandfathers, our grandmothers go through those things, coming from eastern parts of Europe, coming from Europe within itself, all orientations of generations of culture. The more that you can assimilate to the space that your grandparents, even though they didn't know how harsh the story was, still had value in what they were doing, and pertain your life to that. Yeah, where you were born, we're all born into some place for a reason, to give us a little bit of value that we consider that we actually require as we change from where we find ourselves. You never lost. You never lost. There's always been inclusion to the relevance of your purpose in this story. When you check, when you look, when you consider. Stop looking at what is telling you who's done this and who's done that. Have a look at what you've done. The wound, to check the wounds, to heal the wound.
It starts with very much. It starts with self. It's not about what's around me and the story around me. It's where I am with the story within. Where am I with my story? Where am I with my understanding? Of who I am, who I've become. I just passed my 60th birthday as an example. Lots of reflection. Okay, lots and lots and lots of reflection. And going back and everything that I've seen over 60 years, I see that we're still at the same point. Nothing's changed. More people in the world, bigger cities, but the same story. Yet everything before us is telling us to change this story. Where do you start? Well, you start within. For me, it's the only place to begin. I begin with who am I as one-off, as a human being, regardless of I'm male or female, because the human within me has both of these energies. It has my masculine and has my feminine. So how do I walk with this? If I don't walk with my truth, I walk with dismay. And then I end up in the stories of the others. I'm not going to be part of your story. I'm not going to be part of all of this that is not of free will. My free will says that I see, I believe, I am, and I become. I become who I want to be, not what you want me to be. If you feel my hair is too long, guess what? That's your prerogative. That's your perspective. That is your story. That's not mine. Okay? If you feel that I'm not dressed the way that you would want me to be dressed, well, you know what? That belongs to you. And this is part of this wounds that are imposed, because the wound says that now I have to look a certain way, or I have to be a certain way. You mentioned earlier on in the TikToks and what's going on in the TikTok. Okay, well, it goes on in the other ones, in Instagram and all of it. This use of the human body to say, here, look at me. Okay, give me some fame because I have some cleavage, or I can twerk a certain way, or I can do this, where it's totally disconnecting us from the purpose of, the beauty of the human body. I'm all about, you know what, you're a woman, You want to show some cleavage? Fine. Do it respectfully. But if you're out and hanging out on the screen and think you're going to make $1 million because some marketing firm is going to look at your body and say, hey, I want you to sell my product, well, you're just part of the same old garbage of yesterday. You're
Well,
not doing anything.
I used women just as a quick, and like, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I love women.
Oh, so do
I
I.
do love women. Yeah, but like, go even further to the guys that exploit themselves, like seriously cause themselves harm to get giggles and shit laughs. Yeah.
Mm.
And they make money for it. And yes, that's something that they fit in. That's the uniqueness and the beauty of where people can arrive. But don't let those things limit you potentially from being that evolution of that whole next part. You don't even have to be. To exist is simply just acknowledge that every breath that you take changes the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's done in anger, it is only attaching to that is vulnerable and disrespecting of the element of light and love. If it is something that is joyful, that is something that is consistently in the space of acknowledging a lesser valued story to be a past of where you had found yourself, you are only then putting in to what Gaia requires, what the universe requires, and what mankind and humanity require. To fight a fight amongst a story that we are a very small percentage, it's always going to be that way. It's not to fight a fight. It is to continually arrive in the same place and substance, which is that higher vibration, as people start to see that a consistency is all that is required. To this value where they found themselves, to agree that they are in a better place for seeing a brighter day.
It begins at the very, very first breath, like you said. You wake in the morning, you take a breath. Doesn't mean you weren't breathing in the night. You were just a little bit slower. Okay? Where was your mind space maybe in the night? Now you wake up. Where are you going to be with it? Where are you going to be with your essence of, my femininity? I acknowledge my femininity. I acknowledge my masculinity. And it's not because I have this side of my femininity means that I don't like women. Believe me, I like women very, 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 very. Yeah, I'm going to get blushed and all flushed on this one. Okay. But I'm not looking for, how can I say this, put it in my face, as an example. And we walk around and sometimes that's the way it is. And now we're walking in a system where if we acknowledge or say something about it, we're called out because, well, we shouldn't have said that. Well, you just threw it in my face. Okay. What do you want me to do? I can walk by it, but everywhere I walk, isn't that what we're seeing in marketing? If we look at modeling, we look at the fashion industry, we look at all of this, it's portraying upon the sexes to sell that if you buy this, guess what? It makes you more attractive. If you wear something a certain way, it makes you more attractive. Well, I got a little bit of a story about that. I could give a fuck about what you look like on the outside, to be honest with you, because I'm going to see beyond that. I'm going to see within you. And if I see within you that your energy is good and that you're pure, that you have pure of spirit, I may engage with you. But if you're in your negative and you're in your melodrama of, here's my body and trying to portray it and shift it, then you're in the toxicity. You're no longer in woundedness, you're in the toxicity. And this is what needs to be walked away from. Because, like you said, the more that we acknowledge it, the more we engage upon it, the more that it continues. Okay, it's a supply and demand. The demand is there.
It's a band-aid.
Yep.
It's a huge band-aid. It's a huge band-aid that people can lean on. It's a leaning post for those individuals to take as they actually don't have any self-worth. And they see that is the only inclusion of where they're able to go. Because the biggest thing, I find the biggest thing is that when you are restricted from being able to simply be with how you present, okay? And then from that simple denial, from the very first inclusion, you then vary yourself, always trying to remain within that same space, but giving it a different variation. So it might be attractive to a different element. Okay? And that is the life in which we have all had to play, just to simply sit at a fucking table to be able to discuss some form of relevance of who we are and what we represent in this place and where we find ourselves. So when we do that, we never ever actually acknowledge, oh fuck, I put that red beret on to do that and accomplish that day. Yeah, we get caught up in all of this shit, and I use red beret as a hat of variation to what we are as self. So when we continually add to our wardrobe and continually add in all of the space, we were born fucking naked. Doesn't mean be naked, but it means be limited with what you need to add, because you arrived with every form of magnificence in that first breath. That's why they try to slap it out of you. And then within the first 3 minutes of you being born, you're labeled 6 different identities that are deemed relevant in your journey of life. I was born at this time. I was born this way. I was born here. At my parents are blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And this is my name, and I'm a male. We have to carry that. We have to call on that. We lose our birth certificate. Oh, you need to have this to do that. It's a game. It's a fucking game. And I'm sorry for the profanities today, but sometimes it's best used in regards to just simply saying, hey, stop it. There's no need to carry on like this no more. Because each and every one of those people that are doing those stories, that are telling that story of existence, if you don't think that you are monitored like each and every other person around the planet, what is going on? What is in your mind? Allowing you to completely propel that story is taking the feed, taking the life, taking the time of a person that maybe wants to just find what is going on, because they knew that this was happening, but they didn't know that there was another part. This is not finished. This is never, ever finished.
No.
It's never, ever finished.
But many think that, you know what, we're going to hit this 5D and, you know, life's going to be fun. You know, everything's going to be good. You know, they're going to come down from another sky or another starship and show us some technology, and, you know, or they're going to take me up on a starship and take me to where I, you know, so I can go home again. Well, you know what? I got rude awakening for those that think that your home is right here. Okay? Doesn't matter what star system you came from. You're here for a reason. Okay? You're not here to play a game. You're not here to change a game. You're here to be part of life, part of a greater purpose, interaction with all life. And this is a majority of what I try and teach to people is that, you know what, earthing, yeah, I can get very mystical about it and magical and shamanic about it, or I can tell you about the basics. Take your socks off, take your shoes off first, and put your feet down to the ground and, you know, feel where you are, to see that you're connected to something that's more powerful than you are, regardless of your clothing that you wear. You know what? You can wear pink and purple polka dots. It doesn't really make a difference to a deer. Do you think the bird's looking at you and saying, whoa, there's a, you know, beautiful fashion going down the street? Are they looking at your Gucci handbags? Nah. You know, but you might be surprised that the Gucci handbag is being made over in China by a bunch of children in child slavery. But you spent how much for that Gucci handbag? Because it made you a status? Really? Status symbol? You're trying to prove something because of what you wear and how you look. You know.
Oh, look! I wore labels before. I've worn labels. I've done that whole experiment, if you could call it that, as labels.
But Adrian, I got a question for you. Did you buy it because of the label, or did you buy it because it was something you wanted to wear?
I would say both, because, like, with labels, is good quality as well. Okay. Especially through the 80s and 90s. Yeah, it was primo quality. I've still got jeans from the 90s that
bro, this shirt, Is
Yeah, I still
20
got jeans from the
this
90s, rich that are like
this
brand
is
new.
20 years old what I'm wearing. It's never gone out of style because I don't allow it to be part of a style. I allow it to be part of me. I chose it
Right,
because if I
exactly
felt
it.
comfortable in it.
I was going to say because I am a style. I've always prided myself on wearing other stuff, different stuff than what everybody else did. Yeah. It
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
like I realized a very long time ago that the limitations that we put upon ourselves is like a prison environment. If we go down that space of just doing that, then we are only limiting ourselves to that. If we want to hang with the cool kids, we then can't hang with the lesser cool kids. If we want to hang with this and do that, so being independent was also a huge proportion of playing. And you just said we're not playing a game. I see it as completely playing a game because if we weren't playing a game, we wouldn't have the responsibility of finding and obtaining self-worth all the time in a place where we never ever really would go to if we were given an invite to make a choice. So therefore, acknowledging that it's a game, I am only playing my piece as I acknowledge that I am a player of the game.
Uh-huh.
In a game where they don't even know that I'm playing. Well, they do. They know everyone's playing, and they're only allowing limitations to take place on how people are playing their game. And I'm not exploiting anybody. I'm not creating a space that is not truthful. I'm telling the paramount truth that extends further than the story in which 7.8 billion people find themselves. But yet there's nobody to even say, Adrian, let's have a conversation about that. So I see that this is a game. I see that the next 3 years in which we've spoken about, Gary, is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this, because as people consider that those other stories are not as relevant, where are they going to go to? The earthy people. They called you the earthy person. You're too
Mm-hmm.
earthy, Gary. I don't
You
know what
know,
I am.
well, you're a human being for one, okay?
I'm Adrian
And
Sortino. That's all.
you
Pick
have a
like a bit.
name, you have an idea. We have our days when we're filled with our own mind fuckeries. I mean, it happens because we get caught up in the games of the others, okay? And if I look back at, you know, I'll stem back into a story when I was in the IT industry in the IBM Blue world. It's like here's the white shirts, here's the gray, black ties, here's the gray pants, and crew cuts and everything else. And you see the length of my hair? That's how long it was when I was in the IT industry. And believe me, it brought me a lot of challenges. It seriously did. In fact, even the way I was dressing brought me challenges because somebody thought, well, you're dressing like that, you got to be a little bit flaky. Really? No, no. Okay. And those that engaged in that conversation with me, yeah, I was a little bit more cynical and sarcastic because if I could turn around and look at them in the back of their pantsuits, and if there was a middle of winter time, could see the salt stains that were in the back of their Armani pants, and I'd be wearing rubber boots that maybe were color of yellow, and in an incident that happened, I had somebody, well, that's kind of funky, and some oddball, doesn't matter what was said, it was just very degrading, and I pointed out to him the salt stains on the back of his Armani pants, and he didn't realize that the back of his pants had been stained. The following day, he went out and bought the same pair of rubber boots because, the way that the conversation took forward, in the sense that it's not about what color they are, it was about keeping my feet and my pants safe so that I looked decent, at least on the trade floor, even if I had hair down to the middle of my back. People are so caught up in these dogmas and these stigmas, okay, and what fashion is to be, what is being shown to us, what the television is being shown to us, and then we can go on and on and on about everything. So where's the woundedness that comes into this? Well, look at the way we've been programmed. Look at the old narrative that has set us up, to fall. It set us up to fail, and then rely upon the system to help us. You know what? Edmonton or Alberta has announced, as of the last 24 hours, a lottery. $1 million.
Yeah, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. It's ridiculous. The dependency that the system requires is us to follow. And if our thing is to follow our own journey in regards to acquiring the balance of self, that story starts to dissipate. So the extraordinary outcome that we require, time takes time.
Mm-hmm.
But in all of this aftermath, in all of this disruption of this today is the 14th. Today, a year ago, was the first time I did a Facebook Peace Architect video.
Oh,
wow.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. I just jerried that now. I knew it was coming up. But in that last year, the ability to recognize your intuition highlighting you to a story that's about to come to light or has come to light over this last year, you would have each seen relevant to you. Now, if you can simply look at those times that happened, for you to actually say, oh, wow, yeah, I did. It was like a week and I called it. You know that you are on the right pathway. The more that you can then separate from that story and just let it arrive through your intuition to go, oh, okay, that's the next part of the game. Move forward. Because the balance is all the balance that is required is for you to acknowledge that nobody on this planet knows anything different than what you know.
True.
And if you can comprehend that and then ask yourself, what do I know? You'll then ask yourself again, what are you going to allow me to forget? And when you do that, you open the floodgate. And before you know it, when you go to sleep, you forget. You don't dream, you wake up, and it's intuition. You are in the moment that is most relevant to where you find yourself. It's not dangerous. There is no delusion. There is no visions. There is nothing of the sort that will allow you to stop you from failing, from succeeding. You can't fuck this up. You can't fail this if you stay within the proportions of navigating your own intuitive stuff. Yeah.
I'm just so many things racing through the mind, you know, in a sense of this discussion is what we're going into in the depths and how many levels that there are. Okay, and this essence of woundedness, you know, I know the title said wounded masculine, but you know, let's throw the masculine out the door. Why don't we just say wounded human? Because it's exactly what we are. We're 7 billion.
Let's keep it as wounded self.
Yeah, 7 billion wounded selves walking the face of the earth.
Gary, not one person on this planet has allowed their voice to be heard to the proportions of the ultimate truth. They have not been given that platform to do so. It has always been an exaggeration to the aligned system. It may look in proportions of it being a salvation for people to come and actually flock to and be a part of, but it is only driven by the bureaucratic system. And the levels of conceit that lies within.
If there was one thing you could change at this very instance, just one, what would it be?
One thing I could personally change.
For you or for the world? One thing.
Oh, wow. One thing I could personally change. Or like for my own experience, I can only speak of myself. That I see now the many times that soul, intuition, self, oneness arrived on my front door and I slammed it in its face. I apologize every day for that to myself. and forgive it every day, and I allow it to stay, because you can see how it just builds up.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything else I've ever done has meant nothing. Nothing. And when I found that I needed nothing to accomplish what I needed to do.
That's powerful, Adrian. You know, if I ask myself the same question, the one thing that I found myself in reflection for the last couple of days was in this acceptance, to accept the offerings of others for what is being said. And I still find that hard. But based upon previous understandings, where I was lost in this essence of, trying to always be there for others, I started to realize that I can't be there for others anymore. I have to be for me. And that doesn't mean by my ego. It means that the ability is that I start with me so that I can walk this gauntlet of all of the dismay. If I don't be with me, I get pulled into it. Okay. And like the same thing, I slammed heart at the door many times. I slammed it and said no. And slammed the fact to the point where I lost trust in not just myself, but trust in all humans. But yet I didn't lose trust in nature. I didn't lose trust in Gaia and what the earth that I was walking upon. I lost trust in humans because I lost trust in myself. Because I couldn't trust myself with my heart for the other. Got burnt too many times. And so I slammed that door on the essence of, how far I can turn around and trust you. Because now it's turned around, it's no longer something that I give. It's something that's earned. I have to earn it for me, just as much as the other has to earn it for me to allow them to trust. Because in this world, it's hard. Let's face it. The person can look at you and be lying right through their teeth, but you seem to still take in that story because you want to be part of that story. Until I realize that I don't want to be part of that story anymore. I want to be part of a new story. And I focus on creating that new story every day. And I still make my mistakes. And I'm sure we will always make our mistakes. Because if I don't make my mistakes, how do I learn? How do I learn with this balance of my own emotions, my balance of, what am I feeling in the moment? Rather than run away from it because I don't trust it. Now I embrace it. I trust my feelings. I trust my intuition. And then I start to trust others. And to all of those that have gone through these abusive relationships or abusive situations, okay, I don't know what to say other than believe in you. Believe in the power of self. Look at where you've come, Adrian. At 47 years of age, look at what you've achieved. Not to look at what your faults.
Look. The best of me is not yet. The best of me is yet to be seen.
You're still you're still in the flowering stage, my friend. I'm still in the flower. I'm 60 years old. Doesn't mean I'm here.
No. Look. That whole thing, and that's the male world, yeah. And Anthony said, thoughts or hugs to you. Thank you, brother.
Beautiful man, Anthony.
Everyone's beautiful. Everyone's magnificent. Everybody is justified for their mistakes and their successes. Because as you said, mistakes are going to happen, inevitably going to happen. But that's with the governing of ego and time. Okay? And if you take those two elements and throw them out of the equation, mistakes will never happen. It's only undeveloped pathway. Because as you consciously make yourself aware that your purpose is greater than just going and exhausting yourself to a system's requirement, you then engage in a place of what is going to be the best bang for your buck as you assimilate to you. Because you know that you can exaggerate in any proportions because you've had to do so in that previous form. And I say exaggerate, but that's only meaning to exist there. Now, in the proportions of eliminating time and eliminating the equation of ego and seeing the relevance of purpose and the wounds that are unhealed, as those wounds do become healed and they become scars, you stand proud with what you are left with. And you acknowledge that you will not take that same abrupt, consistent to you, in your future. As you have stood naked to the world and said, this is who I am. This is what I am. This is all that you have left me with. There's powerful things to do with yourself as we reflect in front of the mirror. As we give respect to the moment that we decide, I'm taking a breath now, and I am going to speak to the higher vibration. And when you acknowledge that, you might not get the rebuttal instantly, but be well assured that it is out there in the vortex and it's going to be heard for when you do truly feel your intuition.
You know something, Adrian? You're an extremely beautiful man. And I say that, and I know there's many magnificent people. We're all magnificent people. But I admire you for your strength and for your willingness and also for your susceptibility, okay, and your sensitivities. And I can see at times where your sensitivity is really stirring, okay, and you pull up a little bit more strength in front of you. And I admire you for being able to do so, because we need to do this. In this world where we are, we have no choice. If we want to keep speaking about what we're speaking, we're going to be pulled in a bunch of different directions. Okay? We're going to be sometimes maybe even crucified in many ways because we're speaking with heart. And people are afraid to hear those speak with heart. And I'm still trying to figure this out. Why? Why is it?
Because the vibration of love has never left this timeline, has never left this storyline. Those that sit within it feel the crucifixion that was had, the establishment of the monstrosity of where it was built from, to the genuineness of what that first story was about love, the inception of everybody being equal, love one another like you love yourself. In that higher vibration, that beckons every day, and it's heard like the chants that go across the Islamic community through the deserts as they're calling to prayer. This isn't religion. This isn't religion. But this is the truth of what religion is not telling.
Yeah.
And that crucifixion element is something that we all wear because we have all been crucified. Not literally. We have all been crucified in this experience, in this life, this one. Okay? The many lives that we had before that to the ancient times, which aren't as far back as what we think they are. But anyway, we were all part of that. Every person that has ever lived, every person that is on your family tree, their vibration is still here. It's never left because it is part of that storyline. It is part of that consciousness. It is always around for everybody that is in that space to see, to feel, to have. That is the energy that allows this consistency to be at the forefront when you do arrive at it, because it is the simplicity of that that shows you that everybody that has lived and seen the atrocity of this storyline still is here. Their energy is still present. It is the consciousness of what we are.
Emotions. Because you touch something very, very, very sensitive in many ways. When we speak about past timelines and all the atrocities, and I will speak for myself, and all the atrocities that I've seen and sometimes been part of, to where I am now in this timeline, in this golden age, in this essence of alignments of the universe and the cosmic connection, and the pull between something that has happened in this period. If we want to go into the astrology, just take it as a reference point, in the sense that during this period of astrology, 2 full moons, 2 eclipses, 2 or 3 retrogrades, and everything else going through it. It's never happened before in any of the history that we know of. And what's happening during this time? An increased sensitivity of emotions, of, yes, mental duress. I'm seeing it almost daily, of others that are in mental duress because of everything that's being forced upon them. Those that are in work losing work because if they don't conform to, being tested daily, they're falling apart. Others that have walked off their jobs and then find out that their wife has left them because he quit his job because he didn't want to take on, being injected or being tested daily. All of this that comes forward into this storyline of where we are in change. And the change is before us. Every day I see it. Every day I see the atrocities in small ones. When I see a couple as a client, go see to them and they sleep in separate rooms because one doesn't want to wear it and the other one does. And if they're still together at the end of the week, it'll be lucky. But walking into this and hearing it, seeing the brokenness of, the wounded peoples. As much as we said this title, started this title out about being the wounded masculine, it was only a reference point because we're all wounded. We're wounded by the system. We're wounded by what we've been taught about the essence of what love is supposedly being, and finding out that that's not what it is. Okay? That this whole new frequency and vibration is all about love. But most don't know where to start because we haven't been taught. We've learned by experiences, but what have we learned? What have we learned? Absolutely nothing.
We've learned nothing because the story hasn't been told to the proportions of how simple it is.
Yeah.
Everything is exaggerated.
Everything is exaggerated. You're right. Everything is exactly where it is and where it needs to be. Because what we'll see going forward, we're going to have a choice to make.
Look, the complexity is simply something that we all give a moment to, I would think, in regards to the survival of oneself at this point in time. The analytics of what is what, meaning that you have to do this to do that, to get this to be there, to do this, to do that, to do this, to get there, to be that at that age so you can have this. All right? Now, that's the fucking board game of life. I wasn't born with a ball. I wasn't born with a pair of dice in my hand or a fucking cardboard piece to navigate through. In the proportions of the exaggerations, it is everything. It is every inclusion other than the breath that you take. Everything else is an exaggeration. Let's just call it cold hard facts. Now, meeting people, not meeting people, it's the same relevance. Whether or not you give your ultimate self. People are giving their ultimate self in work and home relationships. Okay? Now, if the balance of work and the home relationships are of a consistent spaces of giving, then there shouldn't be really any fucking disruption, because there never ever is, because you're just continually being bent over and paying out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? in home as well as in work, because your work, they're pushing you to proportions of what you wouldn't put yourself to, but you're earning $1 to survive in a space, in a system that's required. Not in any of this is anybody speaking about genuine change.
No.
Genuine change. And when you put the word genuine change in there, you introduce all of them facets of what you currently have. Job, partner, family, environment, all of that. You assess it. You see what and you deem what is relevant. You can move away in a second if you trust that you are making the decision for yourself. Not for any other reason apart from yourself. To inspire people now is to simply just give them why they choose to look at it that way. Let them give you the answer as to what is limiting them. You don't have to sell the big red shiny car, because it already gets the attraction of what that big red shiny car is. Allow the person to ask the question, wow, where did you get that big red shiny car? Oh, this is it. And then open the door to pathway of discussion that may be had. Discussing with anybody at this point in time is a delusion, is an absolute delusion if you are not in a space of conscious, higher vibrational love. Because the ego is like the bouncer at the door. Yeah? And the ego is saying,
why are you here? What you talking about? Can't be that bullshit. This is what they're showing.
Hey, man, it's all nice and proud. It's all peaceful. It is all, the buzz is just like massive. Why is there this restriction?
Oh, because they're doing this and this and this. Have you seen this?
Hey, you're paid for that. Stay there. I don't want to know about that. Let these people in. The shift is only you. Do you tell yourself the same rubbish every day? Or do you tell yourself that there is change that is imminent and you are part of that change? Knowing that the boundaries of that change is that you let go of all of that ignorance of going anywhere. Because all we're going to do is heal and then continue to heal. And when I say continue to heal, it is those people that just arrive that will continue to heal. Because they will see the solid platform that the higher vibration now has created. Because the wellness is cast across the planet. And it is being felt by the third, it's being by that third world effort subconsciously, because they live by that.
Very much so. In fact, some of the most wonderful lives are those that live in the simplicity of a jungle. Okay? They live with nature. They live with self. They live with community. They live with voice. Okay? Their laws are the laws of nature. They provide to each other. They support each other. And we're in a world where we're nothing but trying to be better than somebody else. And that's what needs to be changed.
Exactly. And the matter of being better than somebody else is quite ignorant. Quite ignorant. Because who are they to go down that path? I'm better than nobody else. I am less educated than most people.
If we go down that path, we open up the whole trigger of discrimination. We open up the whole trigger of, fightings of countries. We open up the whole trigger of all of the dismay, the discrimination, the separations of genders, the mindfuckery that's all involved in it. So
the complete inequality, of humanity.
Yeah.
Because it's a humanitarian story. Why people are not being given food, why there are homeless people, why there are people dying from diseases that really are man-made diseases. Why are there organizations that are able to tell continual lies? And
why are the corporations still allowed to sell things that poison us? We know it poisons us, yet they're allowed to be sold because the government makes taxation on the product being sold. So as long as they get their money, That's okay, because now it's going to feed the pharmaceutical side of things and the medical side of things, and all of this rigmarole based upon the product being bought and sold. So,
and it allows the hamster wheel to keep running.
oh God. Okay. Adrian,
Yes.
before we end,
Yes.
what would you like to tell the audience? Anything in the moment.
Oh. Okay. Well, we've spoken about wounded masculine, and we've decommissioned that to wounded self.
Mm-hmm.
So in the acknowledgement that we are carrying wounds, there is a part forgiveness that needs to be applied, not to any other audience apart from you. A genuine forgiveness that you hadn't healed that wound yet, that you had not noticed that that wound was something that was so prevalent in front that you didn't even comprehend. Because the wounds cut very deep when we start to assess how severe they are. And the severity is only not that of fear, not that of daunting, that of acceptance. Because in that whole confusion of what ego has allowed the wounds to be, the heart is what creates the scars to heal. And those scars are only reflections of yourself, not literal, but reflections of yourself in a path that you had taken previously. You don't have to be angry about that, because all of that has to happen for you to reflect this now. So the wounds in which we all carry, as you allow the consciousness to start to heal that, you will see that it is a large part of the consciousness scars in which you're healing from. And I love you. Have a great day.
Unbelievable. You sure you're only 47? Honestly?
In this life I am. In this life I am.
To all of you that have joined in with this discussion between me and Adrian, I greatly appreciate your presence in more ways than you can possibly imagine. And I hope that at the end of this is that you take a little bit of what we've said and it's helped you in some form, in some way, to see something of a bigger picture, broader perspective, but more or less to see from within. As Adrian has stated, to heal from the wounds, we need to start with healing of self. We need to forgive self. We need to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and see that we're a beautiful person to self, not to the outside world. Because if you walk with the beauty of self and you walk with your truth, the world will see you as a beautiful person. They'll be attracted to you. They'll see that you have something that they want. Just keep walking. Don't let them follow. Just give them a little bit of it and let them do the process. I used to set out to try and help others do the process. And I realized that I was just wasting a lot of energy. And now I give you a little bit of the carrot. And now I let you do the process. Because as you do this process, you walk with us in arm, not in anger, but in peace. We're here to change the world in a peaceful movement. We're here to be peaceful humans. I truly believe that. And if it takes my last breath, that's what I'm going to keep on believing in. And Adrian, it's a pleasure to know you. It's a pleasure to speak with you. It's a pleasure to see the efforts that what you're putting in that part of the world is not another part of the world. It's part of all of the world because it has a reciprocal effect. It has this dominoes effect. You've seeded it and now it's rippling forward. Each and every one of us are a seed. And I appreciate that if you take that really serious, plant yourself, love yourself, grow, because you're going to need it. We got 3 years. You're going to need it. So, Adrian, until next week, either Saturday or Sunday, we will try to do this on the Saturday. Just some things come
You're a
up at
busy
times.
man. You're a busy man. Thank you for everybody watching. Thank you for everybody listening.
Yes.
And you, Gary, and thank you, Hassan, again, for putting this together. Thank you, my brother. Thank Gary. Thank you, my brother, for I'm harsh in who I am because that is all I am. And for me to change that, I might as well not even exist. And you're allowing that to take place above what is actually happening outside, disturbing a lot of our brothers and sisters. And thank you for seeing that within me, both of you, and allowing me to be on your platform.